How's she going, boys? Mike here. Welcome back to Grampy's Workshop. Thanks a lot for tuning in today. I don't know where you live, but where we are here in Nova Scotia, on this past weekend, we had a snip-snorting old windstorm with tons and tons of rain. We had over 2 inches of rain on Saturday. I guess that would have been Friday night into Saturday morning. Over 2 inches of rain, 2.07 inches. So not bad. Starting to do the Australian crawl, get out here to the barn. But anyhow, it was also windy. Man, it blew hard. I have a wind gauge here. I have a little weather station and a wind gauge on it. But we're surrounded with trees where my camp is here. And the wind gauge doesn't get a really good indication of what the wind is. I only measured, I think, a wind speed of 22 kilometers an hour, which is hardly anything. But I'm sure it was blowing 80 or maybe even 90 kilometers an hour. Anyways, the point I'm trying to make here is, out back here behind the barn, I have a couple of temporary shelters, those Shelter Logic tents that you get. And they're famous for, whenever there's a windstorm, blow around the neighborhood. So, like, if you don't have a temporary shelter and you'd like to get one, wait till the next windstorm, you may end up with one. But anyways, so what I try to do to combat that, is, when I put my shelters up, I put 6x6 sleepers around the outside edge and anchored my shelter to the 6x6s. So the 6x6 is pretty heavy, so that tends to hold the shelter from moving around, but it's still, wind gets in underneath it, it lifts it up, and it'll bounce it around, so in the morning it won't be where you left it last night. That's what I'm trying to say. It might not move far, but it'll still move. So one of my shelters, it's totally enclosed with a door on it, and I put some rebar, drilled through the 6x6, drove about a 36, 3-foot long pieces of rebar down through the 6x6 into the ground to anchor that. That worked good. My other shelter, it's three-sided with a roof, and it's open on the front and the long side. And we had a windstorm here about the middle part of October, and this shelter moved, and it moves quite a bit. I'm not like it never moved 10 feet, but it moved it right off the foundation I had. I have that set and attached to 6x6. Well, I guess these are 4x6s for this shelter. I had it attached to those, and it moved them, I bet you, 4 feet. Relocated my shelter back away from the barn 4 feet. So I put one little stake, one little rebar. It was only 2 foot long. One little rebar on the front corner of it. I'm going to take you out and show you that. And this past weekend when we had those big howling winds, the shelter moved around, it just wiggled, but it never came off its foundation with just the one 2 foot long piece of rebar. And that was driven into just gravel, because where I had the shelter located out behind the barn, it wasn't real level. So I probably have about 1.5 feet or more of gravel. So this piece of rebar was basically bashed down into this gravel base. It wasn't compacted, but it held the shelter. So the point I'm trying to make here, if you have a shelter and if it blows around on you, go to the hardware store, buy yourself some rebar. I think they come in, I don't know, long lengths, 22 foot probably. You wouldn't need that much, but you know, cut yourself some stakes out of this rebar. The stakes you can buy stakes in the store that screw into the ground. Well, they don't go in very far, but get yourself some rebar, cut it about, I don't know, 3 feet long. Get some way to attach it to your shelter, and then drive that in the corners and attach your shelter to it, and it'll hold the shelter, I hope, for you decent. I'm going to go out and show you mine right now, and we'll see what I was just talking about. So there's, I guess I'm going to call that the main shelter. It's 10 foot wide, 20 feet long, and I put my tractor in that. And wait, just let's go inside here till I show you. Alright, we're inside the shelter now, and I keep the tractor in here with a couple of utensils, or implements, but the point I wanted to show you is I have it sitting on 6x6s. Right here are the 6x6s, down there where my foot is, and right here is a piece of, those are 3 foot long rebar, and I welded a washer on the top, drilled a hole in the 6x6, drove her down through there, and that holds that, and I've got one there, another one right there, another one there, another one there, and another one right down there. So that's 5 along the side. Both sides. I think I put 2 in the back. And this shelter hasn't moved since I did that. So that's a good solve there for that problem. So that really secured this shelter. Now let's go look at the other one. Okay, now this shelter is also 10 by 20. I used to store the tractor in this one, but the shelter was meant only for summertime use, and I was storing my tractor in it all the time, and just the tarps on it were wearing out. So what I did was I went to Princess Auto one day and I found a big tarp. I think this is I think it's 12 by 25. No, I don't know what size it is, but it's longer than 20 feet and it's wider than 10. So I'm going to say 20 by 30. A 20 by 30 tarp. There we go. No, it's not 30 feet. I don't know. It's bigger than 10 by 20. That's all I know. And it was a heavy duty tarp, UV resistant, so I just put that over the roof, and there we go. We have a waterproof shelter again. The walls were still good on this old tent that I had, so I set it up and took this side off it. So it's a great place to store the equipment out of the weather, well, out of the rain anyways. It doesn't really get out of the weather. But as you can see, this is wide open. This is the shelter that used to move around on me in the wind. I'll get around here and show you behind it. One windstorm we had a year ago, this shelter moved from where it is right there, and it was back up right on top of this old sawbuck here. It moved back there. That's 6 feet, and I thought I lost her for sure. I thought I was going to have bent and broken ribs and everything in it. The tent poles that's in it, I thought they were all going to be damaged, but they weren't. So I just pulled her all back to where it belonged, and then it blew around again there in the middle of October when we had kind of a blow. So what I did was I come out, and right here, that's a 2-foot long piece of rebar, and I just welded a washer on it, drove her down in the ground and bolted it to this. That's a piece of 4x6, and you can see the hole here. The hole is wallowed out some where it moved around during this past weekend where we had the big wind, but the shelter didn't get repositioned. That's what I'm trying to say. It's still here where it likes to be and where I like it to be. So, you know, pretty pleased with that. So just a little tip there. Like I always say that I don't know how to do anything the right way, but I know how to get things done. Sometimes I can get things done. But anyway, making some rebar stakes to stake your shelters. If you do that, they'll probably hang around and you'll get to enjoy them on the calm days. Okay, boys, we'll talk to you.